Ever wake up to find a 5-star resort where your family's barn used to be? Yeah, me neither until last summer, when my quiet slice of Georgia dirt turned into the set of some yuppie's wet dream. I'm Jack Miller, 52, retired contractor, and proud owner of 240 acres of rolling hills, courtesy of my late dad, a World War II vet who could stare down a tank and win. That land was my retirement plan, my fishing hole legacy, my screw you, Monday mornings, ticket to freedom. Or so I thought. I'd been gone a week, chasing bass at Lake Oconee, dreaming of nothing but cold beer and a hammock. Pulled up to my property, and boom, my barn's gone. In its place, bulldozers growling like hungover grizzlies, cranes swinging like they're auditioning for a Michael Bay flick, and a gaudy sign screaming, Crestview Retreat coming soon. I'm talking glass-walled yoga studios, infinity pools, and enough fake palm trees to make Miami blush. My land looked like it got mugged by a Home Depot and a sandals resort. I'm standing there, jaw on the ground, when this woman struts up, Laura Bennett, HOA president, hair so perfect it's probably insured, smiling like she's selling me a timeshare. "Oh, you must be Mr. Miller," she says, waving a stack of permits like they're the 10 Commandments. "This land was sold last year. Didn't you get the memo?" Sold. My land? The same 240 acres Dad fought developers over for decades. I'm no lawyer, but I know bullshit when it's wearing pearls and a pantsuit. I storm home, rip open my safe. Deed? Check. Title? Check. Both in my name, clear as a summer sky. But Laura's got this smug look, like she's already won. I'm about to lose it when I spot a yellowed envelope in the safe. Dad's handwriting, shaky but firm, "Jack, watch out for slick developers. They'll steal your soul if you let them." Inside, there's a cryptic note about old surveys and a warning to trust the land, not the suits. Great, Dad, real helpful. You couldn't just leave me a map and a shotgun. I'm fuming, picturing my fishing spot turned into a smoothie bar for Instagram influencers. If you found strangers building a freaking resort on your land, what would you do? Scream? Sue? Grab a bulldozer and play demolition derby? Drop your gut reaction in the comments, I'm curious. Me? I swore I'd fight back. But as I stared at that sign, those cranes, and Laura's crocodile tears, I knew this wasn't just a paperwork screw-up. This was war. And Jack Miller doesn't lose wars. Turns out, the HOA's foundation was built on more than concrete, it was built on lies. I wasn't about to let Laura Bennett and her step-forward smile turn my land into a playground for kale smoothie sippers. But fighting a beast like Crestview HOA meant I needed backup. Enter Hank Thompson, my old army buddy who traded fatigues for a law degree and a knack for sniffing out bullshit. Hank's the guy you call when you need someone to stare down a corporate shark and make it blink. I rang him up, told him about the resort sprouting on my property like a bad rash, and he was at my doorstep by noon, armed with a laptop and a grin that said, "Let's bury these clowns." We set up shop in my dining room, surrounded by coffee mugs and Dad's old files, which smelled like mildew and vengeance. Hank dove into county records online while I tore through Dad's papers, looking for anything to prove my land was still mine. The deed and title were airtight, but Laura's permits nagged at me. How do you build a 5-star resort on someone else's dirt without a single red flag? Hank found the first crack, a sale document from last year, supposedly signed by me, transferring the land to a shell company called Blue Horizon LLC. My signature looked like it was forged by a drunk toddler with a crayon. "Jack," Hank said, eyes gleaming, "this is fraud, and it's got Laura's perfume all over it." We hit the county clerk's office the next day, elbowing through a crowd of retirees arguing over zoning permits. The clerk, a guy with a comb-over and a coffee stain on his tie, pulled up the records. Sure enough, Blue Horizon's sale was filed with a 1984 easement that allegedly gave Crestview rights to develop my land. Problem was, the easement referenced a boundary line that didn't match any survey I'd ever seen. Hank's grin widened. "This is shakier than a Jenga tower in a windstorm," he said. "Let's find the real boundaries." Back home, I dug deeper into Dad's files, half expecting to find a treasure map or a note saying, "Gotcha, Jack." Instead, I found a 1910 survey, yellowed and brittle, tucked inside a cigar box with Dad's dog tags. The surveyor's ink was faded, but the lines were clear. My 240 acres didn't just include the resort site, they swallowed half of Crestviews' existing neighborhood, including their precious clubhouse and Laura's McMansion. I called Hank, who hooped so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Jack, you don't just own the resort. You own their whole damn kingdom." Armed with the survey, we cross-checked Laura's permits. The maps she'd filed were doctored, shifting boundary lines like a kid cheating at Connect 4. Hank traced Blue Horizon LLC to a web of shell companies, all linked to Laura's husband, Richard, a slick real estate mogul with a smile like a used car salesman. The permits, the easement, the sale, it was a house of cards, and we were about to sneeze. Hank filed for an emergency injunction to halt construction, citing fraud and forged documents. By the next morning, the county judge had slapped a cease and desist order on Crestview's bulldozers, freezing the resort like a bad sitcom on hiatus. The HOA's board meeting that night was chaos, and I wasn't even there. Hank got the scoop from a clerk who owed him a favor. Laura, usually cool as a cucumber, was sweating through her blazer, fielding questions from angry residents who'd sunk their savings into timeshares. Richard tried to calm the crowd, but his promises of legal clarity sounded like a guy tap dancing on quicksand. Word spread fast, and by dawn, Crestview scandal was trending on the local Reddit. I couldn't help but smirk, imagining Laura's perfect hair wilting under the heat. Then Laura made her move. She showed up at my house, all smiles and desperation, offering a generous $500,000 to settle the misunderstanding. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. 500 grand for 240 acres with a half-built resort. That's like offering $1 for Fort Knox. "Laura," I said, leaning back in my chair, "you're gonna have to do better than that." Her eyes narrowed, but I saw the panic. She knew I had the 1910 survey, the forged sale, and a judge who didn't buy her act. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "I'm not selling cheap, and I'm not selling to you. But stick around, I've got something cooking that'll make your head spin." Hank and I spent the next day mapping our next move. The injunction bought us time, but Crestview's legal team was circling like vultures. We needed hard evidence to nail Laura and Richard to the wall. Hank pulled strings to get notarized affidavits from the clerk and a retired surveyor who'd worked the county in the 80s. I dug up photos from Dad's files, snapshots of the land before Crestview's cookie-cutter houses invaded, showing landmarks that matched the 1910 survey. Every piece tightened the noose. As the sun set, I stood on my porch, staring at the frozen construction site. The resort skeleton loomed against the sky, a monument to Laura's greed. I thought about Dad's letter, his warning about slick developers. He'd fought them off with grit and a shotgun. I'd do it with lawyers and a 1910 survey. But I wasn't just fighting to keep my land, I was starting to see a bigger play. Crestview wanted a resort. Fine. I'd make sure they paid for it, one way or another. And if I played my cards right, I'd walk away with more than just my acreage. I'd walk away a legend. When you play Monopoly with lawyers, someone's bound to go bankrupt. I was betting it wouldn't be me. With the injunction freezing Crestview's resort like a popsicle in a deep freezer, Hank and I had the upper hand, but Laura and Richard weren't about to roll over. Their high-powered legal team, a pack of Armani-clad vultures from Atlanta, was itching to bury us in paperwork. Good thing Hank thrives on chaos like a pig in mud. We spent days building an airtight case, stacking evidence like cordwood, the 1910 survey, forged sale documents, notarized affidavits from the county clerk, and photos proving my land's boundaries hadn't budged since Teddy Roosevelt was president. To seal the deal, we hired a surveyor, a grizzled ex-Marine named Carl who could read a topo map like a bedtime story. Carl tromped across my 240 acres with a GPS rig and a cigar, confirming what the 1910 survey screamed: the resort's footprint, infinity pool, yoga pavilion, the works, was smack on my property. Better yet, Laura's prized rose garden, the one she bragged about in every HOA newsletter, was technically mine too, along with half the clubhouse and a chunk of Crestview's cul-de-sacs. Hank cackled when Carl showed us the new maps. "Jack, you're not just a landowner. You're a damn empire." The courtroom showdown came faster than a summer storm. The county courthouse smelled like old wood and older grudges, packed with Crestview residents whispering like they were at a funeral. Laura sat up front, stone-faced, her pearls gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Richard fidgeted beside her, loosening his tie like it was a noose. Their lawyer, a slick talker named Grayson with a Rolex the size of a hubcap, spun a tale about clerical errors and good faith development. Hank countered with our evidence, laying it out like a royal flush: the forged signature, doctored maps, and Blue Horizon's shady shell companies, all tied to Richard's greasy fingerprints. The judge, a wiry old coot named Clarence who'd fished with Hank back in the day, wasn't buying Grayson's song and dance. Clarence leaned forward, peering over his glasses. "Mr. Bennett," he said, voice like gravel, "your permits look flimsier than my ex-wife's alimony excuses." The crowd snickered, and Laura's face turned the color of her rose. Hank saved the best for last, handing Clarence Dad's letter. I'd hesitated to share it, felt too personal, like airing family laundry, but Hank insisted. "It's not just evidence," he said. "It's your dad's ghost in the room." Hank read the letter aloud, his voice steady but heavy. Dad's words filled the courtroom, detailing decades of harassment from developers, shady offers slipped under his door, even a 1970s attempt to bribe him with a Cadillac. "They'll come for the land, Jack," Dad wrote. "They always do. Hold the line." You could have heard a pin drop. Clarence's jaw tightened, and I saw a flicker of respect in his eyes, not just for me, but for Dad, who'd fought the same war with less ammo. Grayson tried to object, calling the letter irrelevant, but Clarence shut him down with a look that could curdle milk. "Son, I'm the one with the gavel. Sit." The ruling came down like a sledgehammer. Clarence declared my title undisputed, affirming the 1910 survey's boundaries. The resort, Laura's garden, the clubhouse, all mine. He granted me full ownership and the right to evict Crestview's entire operation unless they coughed up compensation. The courtroom erupted, residents shouting, Laura staring at the floor like she'd seen her own obituary. Grayson sputtered about appeals, but Hank leaned over and whispered, "They're cooked, Jack. Time to turn up the heat." Outside, the local news vultures swarmed, shoving mics in my face. I kept it short. This land's been Miller land for a century. Nobody steals from my family and walks away smiling. Hank pulled me aside as we dodged the cameras. "You've got options now," he said. "Tear it down and make them cry, or name a price that'll make their grandkids wince." I wasn't ready to decide, not yet. The victory felt good, like a cold beer after a long day, but I wasn't done twisting the knife. Laura and Richard had built their castle on lies. I'd make sure they paid the mortgage. That night, I sat on my porch, the resort skeleton looming in the distance, cranes frozen like guilty kids caught in a cookie jar. Reddit was ablaze with Crestview scandal threads, locals posting memes of Laura's rose garden labeled Jack's backyard. I scrolled through, chuckling, but my mind was on Dad's letter. He'd warned me about slick developers, and here they were, same game, fancier suits. The judge's ruling gave me the land, but I wanted more than dirt. I wanted Laura and Richard to choke on their own greed. Hank called, buzzing like a kid on Christmas. "Jack, we've got them by the short hairs. Their legal team's scrambling, but they know an appeal's a long shot. Start thinking numbers." Numbers? I hadn't gotten that far, but the idea of making Crestview bleed green felt right. I pictured Laura's smug smile from that first day, waving her fake permits. 500 grand, she'd offered, like I was some rube. Nah, this was gonna cost her millions, maybe more. And if they couldn't pay, I'd have a front row seat to their empire crumbling, one overpriced condo at a time. As I cracked another beer, a new thought hit me. Why stop at Crestview? That resort was prime real estate, and I held the keys. A rival hotel chain, maybe Hilton or Marriott, might salivate over a ready-made resort, fraud be damned. I could play hardball, pit them against Crestview, and walk away with a paycheck that'd make Dad's old Cadillac bribe look like pocket change. The game wasn't over, it was just getting fun. They wanted a resort. Now they're getting a masterclass in regret. With the judge's ruling in my pocket and Crestview's resort legally mine, I held all the cards. Laura and Richard's empire was teetering, and I was ready to give it a shove. Hank, still riding the courtroom high, was already plotting our next move. Jack, he said, slurping coffee like it was whiskey, you can bulldoze that eyesore or make M pay through the nose. What's it gonna be? I grinned. Why choose? I'd squeeze Crestview until they begged, then sell the whole mess to someone with deeper pockets. Crestview's board called an emergency meeting, and word leaked they were scrambling to raise cash. Their plan? Float a bond, beg residents for emergency assessments, anything to avoid eviction. I set my price at $250 million, enough to make their eyes water but low enough to keep them hoping. Laura sent a lawyer to my doorstep with a counteroffer, $10 million and a heartfelt apology. I sent him back with a laugh and a message, tell Laura to start packing her roses. The Reddit threads lit up, locals crowing about Jack the Land King, while Crestview's timeshare owners posted crying emojis. Then I upped the ante. Hank had a contact at Coastal Crown Hotels, a rival chain hungry for a Georgia foothold. I met their VP, a no-nonsense guy named Tom with a handshake like a vice grip, at a diner off the highway. Over greasy burgers, I laid out the deal, 240 acres, a half-built resort, and Crestview's clubhouse thrown in for kicks. Tom's eyes gleamed when I showed him Carl's survey maps. You've got Crestview by the balls, he said. What's your number? I leaned back, channeling Dad's poker face. North of $2 billion, and you guarantee jobs for local workers. Tom didn't blink. We'll talk. While Coastal Crown crunched numbers, I kept Crestview on the ropes. Hank leaked our survey findings to the local paper, and the headline screamed, HOA's resort built on stolen land. The story spread like wildfire, picked up by Atlanta News and even a few national blogs. Crestview residents, who'd once sipped Laura's Kool-Aid, turned on her. At a town hall, they booed her off the stage, demanding refunds for their timeshares. Someone egged her McMansion, and a viral meme showed her rose garden with a caption, property of Jack Miller. I didn't egg anything, but I sure as hell enjoyed the show. Laura's reign was crumbling, and Richard wasn't faring better. Hank's digging uncovered emails tying him to Blue Horizon's forged documents, and the DA's office took notice. A fraud investigation loomed, and Richard's golf buddies suddenly had scheduling conflicts. Laura resigned as HOA president in a tearful letter posted to Crestview's website, blaming unforeseen legal challenges. Unforeseen? Lady, you built a resort on my land with fake permits. The only thing unforeseen was me not rolling over like a doormat. With Crestview in chaos, I played my trump card. Coastal Crown came back with an offer, $2.3 billion for the land, resort, and all Crestview assets on my property, plus a clause ensuring local jobs. I had Hank triple-check the contract, looking for traps. It was clean. We met Tom at his Atlanta office, a glass tower that screamed money, and signed the deal over bourbon. You're a hell of a negotiator, Jack, Tom said, raising his glass. I shrugged. Just a guy who doesn't like being screwed. The ink dried, and I was a billionaire, minus Hank's cut, which I doubled because the man deserved it. The fallout was glorious. Crestview's board folded, unable to match Coastal Crown's offer or fight eviction. Residents who'd bought into the resort dream were livid, filing lawsuits against Laura and Richard. The DA indicted Richard for fraud, and Laura was named a person of interest. Their McMansion went up for sale, roses and all, but the market wasn't kind. I heard they moved to a condo in Florida, dodging reporters and angry neighbors. Couldn't have happened to nicer folks. As news of the sale broke, the local Reddit exploded with Jack Miller appreciation threads. Someone photoshopped my face onto a king's throne, captioned, ruler of Crestview. I didn't ask for the crown, but I wasn't giving it back. The paper ran a follow-up, calling me the man who beat the HOA. Hank framed it and hung it in his office, right next to a photo of us fishing, grinning like idiots. Coastal Crown moved fast, taking over the resort and renaming it Crown Retreat. They kept the infinity pool but ditched the fake palms, small mercies. I drove by the site a week later, watching workers swarm the place under new management. The Crestview Retreat sign was gone, replaced by a Coastal Crown logo. It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for months. I'd avenged Dad's land, turned Laura's greed into my payday, and stuck it to an HOA that thought it could bully its way to paradise. Revenge doesn't always pay the bills, but when it does, it's sweeter than a cold beer on a hot day. Sitting on my porch that night, I cracked open Dad's old cigar box, running my thumb over his dog tags. The fight was over, but the win was his as much as mine. He'd held the line against developers with nothing but grit. I'd done it with lawyers and a billionaire's check. I raised my beer to the stars, toasting the old man. We got Dad, I said. And we got good. The resort lights twinkled in the distance, a reminder that sometimes, the best way to beat a thief is to sell them the rope they hang themselves with. Who knew revenge could pay the mortgage and then some? With $2.3 billion in my bank account and Crestview's resort now Coastal Crown's crown jewel, I'd turned Laura and Richard's con into the deal of the century. The dust had settled, but the fallout was still rippling, and I was soaking up every minute. Reddit threads crowned me a folk hero, with memes of me riding a bulldozer over Laura's rose garden. The local bar started serving a Jack Miller IPA, bitter as an HOA fine. I didn't ask for the spotlight, but I wasn't dodging it either. First order of business, I bought a lakeside cabin an hour from the old property, nothing fancy, just enough room for a boat, a grill, and a view that didn't include cranes. The cabin was my escape hatch, no neighbors, no HOAs, just me and the fish. I kept Dad's 240 acres, leasing most of it to a local farmer who'd been screwed by Crestview's zoning games. The rest I set aside for a project that'd make Dad proud, but more on that later. Retirement at 52 felt damn good, like flipping the bird to every 5 a.m. alarm I'd ever cursed. Crestview's collapse was the gift that kept giving. The HOA dissolved faster than a cheap paper towel, its board scattering like roaches under a flashlight. Residents, burned by Laura's timeshare scam, lawyered up, but their lawsuits hit a wall. Richard's shell companies were bankrupt, and Laura's assets were tied up in the fraud case. The DA nailed Richard with multiple counts of forgery and fraud. He's looking at a decade in a cell with no infinity pool. Laura dodged jail but got slapped with restitution orders she'll be paying until she's 90. Last I heard, they were shacked up in a Florida condo, hiding from process servers and angry ex-neighbors. Couldn't write a better ending if I tried. Coastal Crown moved fast, turning the resort into Miller's Legacy Retreat. The name was their idea, a nod to the guy who handed them a ready-made goldmine. They sent me a photo of the grand opening, a shiny plaque by the entrance, honoring Dad as a World War II vet who defended his land with honor. I got choked up, not gonna lie. Dad would have hated the fuss, but he'd have loved knowing his name outlasted Laura's roses. The resort's a hit, packed with tourists, locals working steady jobs, and not a fake palm tree in sight. Every booking sends a little royalty my way, a reminder that I didn't just win, I rewrote the game. I wasn't done giving back. Dad's letter, the one that tipped the scales in court, stayed with me. He'd fought for the land, for family, for something bigger than himself. So I donated $50 million to a veterans charity in his name, funding housing and job training for guys who'd come back from war with nothing but scars. The ceremony was small, just me, Hank, and a few vets at a VFW hall. One guy, a Marine who'd lost a leg in Iraq, shook my hand and said, "Your dad would have liked this." That hit harder than any billion-dollar check. The absurdity of it all still makes me laugh. An HOA thought they could steamroll me with fake permits and a smug smile. Laura probably pictured me as some hick who'd take her $500,000 and slink away. Instead, I turned her resort into my ATM and her legacy into a punchline. It's peak America, the obsession with paperwork, the audacity of entitled bureaucrats, the sheer gall of thinking you can steal a man's land and call it progress. I've got half a mind to write a book, title it How to Screw an HOA and Retire a Billionaire. Hank says it'd sell like hotcakes. Sitting on my cabin's porch, sipping that Jack Miller IPA, I scroll through Reddit for kicks. The Crestview scandal threads are still alive, with locals swapping stories of Laura's reign of terror, petty fines, power trips, the works. Someone posted a grainy photo of her Florida condo, captioned, "From McMansion to misery." I don't hate her, not really. Hate's too much work. But I hope every time she sees a Coastal Crown ad, she chokes on her rose. The fight taught me something Dad knew all along: land's more than dirt. It's roots, memory, a line you hold no matter who comes knocking. He held it with a shotgun, I did it with a surveyor and a sharp lawyer. Either way, we kept what was ours. I raise my beer to the lake, the stars, the old man's ghost. Here's to you, Dad, I mutter. We showed M. So, next time someone tries to steal your land, or your parking spot, your dignity, whatever, remember, sometimes the best revenge is a billion-dollar deal. Play smart, dig deep, and don't let the Loris of the world see you sweat. Like this story? Smash that like button, share it with a buddy who's tangled with an HOA, subscribe for more wild rides, and ring that bell so you never miss a beat. Me. I'm off to catch some bass. The lake's calling, and for once, nobody's building a resort on my damn view.